Well, that wasn't so bad of a year now, was it? I even managed to get some fun movies out of it, so I'll consider that a win for my entertainment. Okay, anyways, wonder what's been happening on Twitter. Oh! Well, it was fun while it lasted. Anyways, might as well migrate over to Facebook. Oh. Well, at least my mental health will be happy about the death of social media. Anyways, I'm sure there are some good things happening in this world. Let's see what's been going on. On second thought, let's just stick to the animation industry. I'm sure everything's going fine in there. See, this is exactly why I need animation as a form of escapism.
And I'm so glad that it is for 2022 because, in terms of their quality, this was a very good year for animated films. There's been a good amount of them that range from being decent to mid, but there's also been a lot of great ones as well that are worth rewatching and enjoying for a long time, and maybe even some that I could consider as my new favorites. However, that doesn't mean that there haven't been a handful that just suck. And that's why I'm here to narrow them all down to highlight both the best and the worst. To celebrate the ones that gave us a wonderful time with their great craftsmanship, and to burn the bad ones as much as the current state of social media. I'm Animat, and welcome to the top 5 best and worst animated films of 2022.
Some lucky ducks get all the luck. Yes, they do, but that's not us. Some unlucky schmucks.
Number 5.
Worst.
Apollo 10.5, A Space-Age Childhood. Okay, I know this doesn't look like a good start to the list, especially when this is one of the more highly acclaimed animated features of the year. But I'll be honest, this really did not do much for me. When I watched Apollo 10.5, I felt like I was lied to by its own identity crisis. It claims to be an alternate reality where the first moon landing was actually done by a 10-year-old boy, which I was ready to get on board with, but then it continuously loses its sense of direction and doesn't know if it wants to tell that story or be a documentary about growing up in the 1960s where space travel was the biggest trend in America. It's like if director Richard Linklater got frequently sidetracked by his own childhood memories and ended up creating the first ever animated film that functions as a nostalgia trip for boomers who were raised in the American suburbs. Don't get me wrong, it's still an admirable feature on a technical level. The rotoscoped animation is great, and the actors did their jobs well. Even if it's on the worst list, I wouldn't say that this is a bad movie at all. It's just that I enjoyed most of the other animated films more, and I consider this one to be mid at best. I'm sure there's an audience for this, but when compared to the other mid-tier 2022 films like the DC League of Super Pets or Minions: The Rise of Gru, I can't help but feel like this is going for an extremely niche group of people, and everyone else outside of that would get bored very quickly. I agree that the animation is out of this world, but I don't think Apollo 10.5 stuck the landing.
How'd that happen?
Listen, are you good at math?
Yeah.
Did you get a perfect 100 on every test?
No.
Okay.
Some lucky ducks get all the luck. Yes, they do.
Number 4.
Worst.
Luck. This was supposed to be a significant landmark movie. Not only being the debut of Apple's signature animation studio for Apple TV+, Skydance Animation, but this was also noted to be the grand return of disgraced animation icon and notorious drunken creep, John Lasseter. And what did they have to show for this monumental occasion? An interesting concept of a world based on the legends and history of luck, a lovely score, a solid voice cast, and a team of talented animators capable of delivering captivating animation. I'll admit, Skydance certainly has the tools to create something special, and I'll even say that this could have been an awesome movie if it were handled well. But here's the problem though, it wasn't. Whatever chances that it had of turning out good were completely thrown out, just like he did back at Disney and Pixar, and ended up giving the movie some of the worst writing in a film this year. The characters are uninterestingly weak, the story is dreadfully predictable, it spends too much time lecturing the world building instead of letting the viewers immerse in it, and the story structure is just a complete mess. But the worst aspect of Luck, and what makes John's return feel so pathetic, is how it tries so hard to be like Disney. It's like it rather wants to copy the modern Disney style so badly with similar storytelling and even some of the same designs instead of just being its own thing. If anything, it's another example of why Disney made the right decision to kick Lasseter out, and now they're much better off without him. Skydance tried to make a big deal that they be this new competitor in the animation industry, and that they got the former creative head of Disney and Pixar by their side. But now they need a lot more than just luck to prove that they are worthwhile.
Just how unlucky are you?
Some lucky ducks get all the luck. Yes, they do.
Number 3. Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Roderick Rules. Last year, when Greg made his cartoon debut with the animated Diary of a Wimpy Kid movie, it was fine for what it is. Definitely nothing that's noteworthy, but for a film that's less than an hour that you find on Disney+, it's relatively harmless, and it does the job to deliver that Wimpy Kid charm in a new way. But now that they came back for an encore so that Greg's brother can take center stage, the charm from before quickly washed off, and it resulted in a picture that has the same problems, but very little of the same assets to keep itself passable. I do get the message of the story in regards to brotherhood and how it wants to show the ups and downs of living with siblings, but the execution of it all comes off as weak, especially when the Heffley brothers themselves are so appalling that they mostly spend their time in the film just blackmailing each other and clashing their toxic personalities. Not to mention how the animation looks like it's telling its viewers that this film didn't have the proper amount of time or resources to be created. In a way, this is like if Roderick himself produced an animated feature, just doing the bare minimum so that this project exists. He doesn't care about quality, he just wants to get it over with and give Disney Plus something that is nothing more than just content filler. And while I was watching this mean-spirited bond of Greg and Roderick, I can't help but ask myself, is this movie necessary? I mean, not only do we have the original book, but we also have a film adaptation with the 2011 live-action movie that you can find on Disney Plus as well. What's the point of giving us this subpar cartoon version? Sure, it's not at number 1, but the best word to describe this movie is unnecessary. And if Roderick Rules is any indication of these adaptations, then I don't think Greg's Diary will have much pages left on Disney Plus.
I will say, yeah, the last straw is in the works, and we hope to, I'm hoping to do lots and lots of these over time.
Oh God, Jeff Kinney is gonna land before time this thing, is he?
Some lucky ducks get all the luck. Yes, they do.
Number 2. Paws of Fury, The Legend of Hank. You know when you hear insecure white men who obviously never saw Blazing Saddles say that we could never make Blazing Saddles today? Well, they've just been proven wrong, because after being in development hell for several years, we finally have the samurai-themed animated remake with some conservative updates. And by conservative, I mean that it took out everything that people love about Blazing Saddles and replaced it with boringly safe materials to turn this into one of the most forgettably bland animated films in recent years. Everything about it is unappealingly generic, and it offers nothing that others haven't done that's considerably better. It's bad enough that it has a boringly typical coming-of-age story, animation that's just okay at best, and the characters are more unlikable than they are memorable, but as a Blazing Saddles remake, the worst thing about it is that it's not really funny. Those other factors could have been forgiven as long as it kept audiences laughing throughout, but if you're remaking one of Mel Brooks' greatest comedies and you failed to make it even slightly funny, then you've already failed your purpose. Not to mention how it completely removed Saddles' commentary of how racism is objectively stupid and replaced it with this dull, be a true hero message, And as a samurai movie, it's not that action-packed to make it engaging whatsoever. As a result, the movie's existence is pointless because I could choose to watch Blazing Saddles instead because it's a better version of Paws of Fury in every way. Sure, Saddles may not be kid-friendly, but even for the younger ones, there are much better alternatives to choose from that will grab their attention easier than this. No wonder that they had to change the title of this picture, because there's certainly nothing about The Legend of Hank that's blazing.
What? Get out of here! Who even made that? It's you! Don't believe everything you read.
Some lucky ducks.
And the #1 worst animated film of 2022 is The Ice Age Adventures of Buck Wild and Hotel Transylvania Transformania. Yes, as crazy as it sounds, the #1 spot on the worst list belongs to not one, but 2 terrible animated sequels. The reason why I'm putting both these movies here is because of how similar they are in terms of why they are the worst of the year. They're both unnecessary sequels to franchises that have completely overstayed their welcome. Their comedy feels a lot more like cringe, and they each star not just the worst characters of their respective franchise, but also some of the most insufferable cartoon characters ever made, with Crash and Eddie from Ice Age and Johnny from Hotel Transylvania. Now, I will state that they are not completely identical in their awfulness, and there are qualities that one does have over the other. On one hand, Transformania does have a few moments that do make me chuckle more than Buck Wild, which I never did once for the latter. Then again, I can see the potential of having a Buck Wild spin-off to exist more so than not just another pointless Hotel Transylvania sequel, but another one that primarily focuses on the idiot who debatably single-handedly ruined the whole film series. Even if some of their reasons may be different, they still end up with the same results. Their writing is a bigger joke than their comedy, their animation is just an eyesore, their characters make me wish I never see them again, and they did not hide their sole purpose of trying to desperately milk their respective IPs, despite both being bone dry. I was already getting tired of these movies, and I thought that their last films were the worst that they could possibly get. But then these two came along and found a way to sink even further than my own expectations of them. They're not just the worst movies of their respective franchises, but The Ice Age Adventures of Buck Wild and Hotel Transylvania Transformania are both the #1 worst animated films of 2022.
Whew, boy. You know, glad I got that out of my system. Now I can go and actually replace that with all the good memories from the best movies of the year. But before we go into that list, let's take a look at the honorable mentions. Funny enough, some of the movies of this year that are not either on the best or the worst list kind of have this similar theme of being a little bit of a downgrade compared to their respective studios' other works. I mean, they are still way better than what happened to Sony, where they went from some awesome picks like this last year to
I'm gonna explode into 1,000 little excited bits, and then those little excited bits are gonna explode into millions of tiny little excited bits!
that piece of cringe. And on their own, they are fine as is. It's just that you know that the studios that have made those features could do way better. But still though, and I will be repeating this, that a good chunk of the animated films of 2022, or I would say the majority of them, they are actually very solid movies. And I would even say that if it weren't for the fact that we have gotten so many amazing animated films this year, then some of these would have actually made it onto the best list. But the reason why that we are going to go and quickly talk about them is that even though that they're not either among the best or among the worst, they are at least worth mentioning. And they are
The Bad Guys! I'll explain more a little later, but this got very close to making it on the best list. Lightyear, technically the weakest of the Toy Story films, but still holds up as an epic sci-fi blockbuster. Minions: The Rise of Gru. It's more of a crowd pleaser than a good movie, but it does deliver what people want from the Minions, so I can't be mad at them. And if you don't believe me, ask the gentle Minions. The Sea Beast, an awesome action flick where we get to see pirates fighting sea monsters. If only it didn't depend on copying How to Train Your Dragon so much. DC League of Super Pets. It's like if you mix the Justice League with Paw Patrol. Not a great movie, but still better than the Snyder-style junk that DC throws out. My Father's Dragon, a charming and beautiful looking children's book style feature that can be way too goofy and too depressingly dark at the same time. Strange World, Disney's latest sci-fi adventure that's like Atlantis, The Lost Empire, and Treasure Planet, that is also one of the weaker films in their library, just like Atlantis, The Lost Empire, and Treasure Planet. And finally, Night at the Museum, Kal-Mun-Ra Rises Again. As long as you forget that this is a Night at the Museum movie and get past the bad writing, the film can be fun with its decent animation and surprisingly engaging action scenes. Now, if I were to go expand both the best and the worst list, where would these movies go? Well, in that case, the worst would also have Strange World, Night at the Museum, Kal-Mun-Ra Rises Again, Minions: The Rise of Gru, and DC League of Super Pets, while the best would also feature My Father's Dragon, The Sea Beast, Lightyear, and The Bad Guys. While not strong enough to be among the best or weak enough to be among the worst, they ultimately fall in the category of being just okay. And being okay is okay.
The bad guys become the good guys so we can stay the bad guys. You know what I'm saying?
It's fantastic.
Some lucky ducks get all the luck. Yes, they do.
Number 5. The Bob's Burgers movie. As someone who has never seen Bob's Burgers, this was my personal biggest surprise of the year. The Bob's Burgers movie turned the popular series into a hilarious animated musical that can be found in the same leagues as The Simpsons movie and South Park Bigger, Longer, and Uncut. It has a fun-filled story that gets you engaged with the Belcher's Dilemma. It has a whole family of great characters. The animation got an admirable upgrade from the show, and the comedy got me laughing the whole way through. I'd even go as far and say that this is the funniest animated movie this year. I won't fully say that this is a perfect burger that they serve, since it can get tangled up in some unnecessary side plots, and for a movie that claims to be a musical, it doesn't really commit to actually being a musical. But even at that, I can look past those problems because I still find myself getting into the movie easily, and some of the songs are really catchy. I mean, I can't say the songs are bad when I'm using one of them as the theme of this list. But what I personally admire the most from this feature is how both fans and non-fans can easily get into the movie. Fans of the series can already hop into this and see what they love from the show be amplified, but newcomers, such as me, can also come in without necessarily watching any episodes beforehand for context and still get into this as much as the fans, along with getting to know the Belchers and their family burger business. Not many movies based on animated series can do that, and for that, along with all the laughs, it makes this movie even more delicious than it already is.
What? It's summer and sex sells, baby.
Some lucky ducks get all the luck. Yes, they do.
Number 4. Wendell and Wild. After almost 14 years since his last feature, stop-motion master Henry Selick is back and brought with him one of the most chaotically enjoyable movies of the year. With his unexpected partnership with the latest master of horrors, Jordan Peele, they and their entire animation team crafted a uniquely special feature with top-quality animation that features appealing abstract designs by illustrator Pablo Lobato that gives the film a very distinct and fascinating look, some strong and memorable characters that got the aid of some talented voice actors, a powerful and heartfelt message about letting go of your past, and the great signature dynamic comedy of Key and Peele. I do agree that this isn't really Selick's best feature he made, especially when people have been split with how the story is confusing because of all the side plots going all over the place, but that doesn't change how this is just pure Halloween fun. Actually, I wouldn't be surprised if this does find itself to become the next Halloween cult favorite. We've seen this happen many times with other Halloween-themed stop-motion pictures like Corpse Bride, Paranorman, and even Selleck's very own Nightmare Before Christmas. And Wendell and Wild falls into that exact category, especially with the way that it beautifully mixes spookiness and comedy. At first, this may sound like a crazy combination with the animated craftsmanship of Henry Selick, the horror senses of Jordan Peele, the comedy of Key and Peele, and a prominent theme of zombies and demons, and while, yeah, it's undeniably crazy, but it's also a wild ride from hell that will guarantee to give you a good time.
Good morning, RBC. Reports of my death were greatly exaggerated.
Some lucky ducks get all the luck. Yes, they do.
Number 3. Turning Red. Pixar showed us that you never know what your year could ultimately turn out. At the beginning of 2022, I and many others thought that Lightyear was going to be the studio's main course, while Turning Red would only be the side dish. And while they're both good in their own right, by the end of the year, people gladly toss Lightyear aside because they just can't get enough of the giant red panda. And what makes this feature stand out is how it is completely new from the studio. It really is unlike any other Pixar film we've had before, all while retaining their reputation of having masterclass storytelling. Maybe not the best writing that they've displayed, but the film still features a story that is very heartfelt and makes it worth investing throughout. The animation is a lot more dynamic to give it an enjoyable look. The characters are just so much fun to watch. It goes bold with its message of growing up, and it's up there as one of the funniest Pixar films. And with how it went very well with this new direction, Turning Red became a prominent example of how we're entering a new age of Pixar. Let's be honest, times are changing and there's nothing people can do about it. The old masters can't always make movies there forever, and they eventually have to make room for fresh and more diverse filmmakers to tell new stories and take the studio to places they've never been before. After witnessing the incredible directing talents of Domee Shi, she helped establish some confidence that while Pixar may never be the same, their future is still as exciting as it always was. And this year, it's all thanks to a Canadian Asian girl with some unusual transformation powers. Although, as a cartoon reviewer, I feel like something is missing here, but what is it? Oh, I know!
Some lucky ducks get all the luck. Yes, they do.
Number 2. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. Before I talk about this one, I gotta address what is possibly the hottest take here. Why is The Bad Guys not on the best list? Like I said, it was close, and I mean very close to being in here. Especially when almost everything about it, from the characters to the animation to the comedy, are some of the best that DreamWorks had done in a long time. However, the one thing that's holding it back is its subpar predictable story. Don't get me wrong, it is still a great movie. It's just that, as you can see, we've gotten so many other great animated films this year that it's not easy to pick just 5. Which includes DreamWorks' other animated film of 2022. Similar to Henry Selick, it's been over a decade since we've seen Puss in Boots. But not only did he make a glorious return to the big screen, but he came back with the best movie of the franchise since the second one. As it contains all the fairy tale fun and engaging action that we've come to expect from the swashbuckling feline, it also has plenty of great surprises, like an emotional and thought-provoking story about what it means to live life to the fullest, a new Spider-Verse-like style that gave the animation an amazing upgrade, and some new memorable characters that are awesome additions to the franchise. But what could be considered the crowning achievement of the sequel is something that has been unheard of for several years: bringing back the magic of Shrek. Sounds weird, I know, but what I mean is that the movie shares the same feeling that made Shrek a cinematic icon back in the early 2000s. Some could say that it was once lost, but But The Last Wish brought it back to life, and not only did it cause renewed interest in bringing back Shrek, but it also makes it sound like a good idea. I never thought that I had a wish for another movie in the Shrek universe to be an exciting adventure, but Puss in Boots granted that wish, and I couldn't be happier.
Without life to spare, I am nothing.
When you only have one life, that's what makes it special.
Some lucky ducks.
By the way, are you having a good time so far? Then don't forget to subscribe if you haven't for more exciting videos like this. But without further ado, the #1 best animated film of 2022 is Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. One of the weirdest pop culture moments of 2022 was how we ended up with not one, not two, but 3 distinctly different film adaptations of Pinocchio. There was the Russian animated film that Lionsgate imported, which stars Pauly Shore and Jon Heder, that became a viral meme. There was the live-action remake of the 1940 Disney classic that is certainly not as beloved as the 1940 Disney classic. And then there is the good one. The film that Guillermo del Toro spent 14 years to bring his unique vision to life. And after all the hard work of making it happen, and even more from his animation team, the result is possibly the greatest Pinocchio adaptation since the Walt Disney version. It's a wonderful new take that is both fresh and familiar to have viewers re-experience the Carlo Collodi story like if it's their first time. The story is more daring and emotional, as it boldly dives into themes of the cruelty of fascism and questioning what it means to live. The stop-motion animation is absolutely beautiful, and I'm sure will be remembered as one of the finest examples of the medium. The casting is absolutely perfect, the characters provide memorable versions of the familiar names in the book, along with some interesting new ones that spice up the mix, and a little extra dose of enjoyable musical numbers. And while it does take a lot of different directions to give the movie some unexpected twists and turns, the spirit of what we know and love about Pinocchio still remains with how it presents disobedience. Not only showing the obvious problems with them and how it can get the wooden boy into trouble, but also some of the good that comes with it when used for acts of selflessness, achieve unity, and fighting against fascism and other forms of far-right ideologies. And I'll admit that I do have some personal respect for the film, as it was the first time in years that a movie had me in tears by the end of it. Many are already calling this one of Guillermo del Toro's best movies yet, and as a fan of his works, I certainly agree. But regardless of how it is compared to his other movies, in this case, his version of Pinocchio is the #1 best animated film of 2022.
And that's all I've got for the top 5 best and worst animated films of 2022. I gotta say, that really was such an awesome year for animated films. But based on its schedule right now, it looks like 2023 might get even bigger with some of the most anticipated animated movies so far. So much so that some of them could actually be considered some of the most anticipated movies so far. And if you don't believe me, then take a look at this.
I don't know how this is going to turn out, but all I know is that I am so excited for this. She's alive! She's alive! All I know about this is that this is based on a book that Paul McCartney wrote, so we'll see how it goes, I guess? I do like the legend, so maybe they'll do something cool with this. No pressure, Sony. Just the most important sequel you've ever made that you put most of your resources on and everyone's expecting will be another masterpiece. Oh, I like where this is going. I'm not a big TMNT fan, but judging by who's involved, this sounds crazy, and now I'm curious. After Luck, don't expect me to be excited for this one. That first movie was surprisingly good. I'm down to see what they got here. I mean, I love the first movie, but I didn't ask for a sequel. And I certainly did not ask for a sequel to this either. This is the most Disney thing I've ever heard, and I cannot wait. And finally, birds. Yep, just birds. Then again, this will be from the director of Ernest and Celestine, so we may have to keep our eyes out for this one. See you later, dudes!
never know how long you have with someone until they're gone.